Episode of the Kam Johal Show, and tonight we're live with my guest Michael Odendahl, and I'll be introducing him to you in just a few minutes. So just thought I would catch up on what's going on, particularly in my hometown of Leicester, where the COVID infection rate is twice that of London. Dreadful report. We've been in lockdown literally since March, but you know what, I'm a boy from Leicester. We need to do our part. So why is the infection rate so high? Part of that's to do with the garment industry that's based there, workers not wearing masks, people intermingling with each other when they shouldn't be doing. So, we've all got to work together to get to this point. It's a really dreadful thing to be leading the country on. And the other thing is there's a reluctance to take the vaccine. And, we've spoken many occasions about what's going on with the vaccine and, should we take it? Shouldn't we take it? The infection rate tells us that, we need some form of protection. So why there's a reluctance within the community, I really don't understand. Please talk to your GPs. Please talk to people that have got knowledge about the vaccine. Do not go to traditional people in our community who do not understand the science behind this thing. So go and talk to your doctors, go and talk to medically qualified people who can give you the information that you need to make that decision. So lockdown is easing in most parts of the country. We do not want cities like Leicester to be lagging behind and still be in a form of lockdown. This is one thing that we're truly in together. So we've got to do our part, and that's the way we're going to come out of this. So please go and do something about it. And if you're a garment factory owner, can you please put the measures in place that we need? The safety of your workers is your responsibility. And so you will be culpable and you will be held responsible at some point if there's an outbreak in your premises. And, who wants that to be the news that you are leading in Leicestershire? So let's all work together. Let's get the R number down and get these infections down so that we too can enjoy the freedoms that the city of Leicester hasn't had since March last year. So that's all I shall say on the matter. So I've got a great show for you. And Michael Odendahl is a very dear friend of mine, and I'm going to be introducing him today. It's a slightly different kind of show and a slightly different kind of edge. As you know, that I'm an entrepreneurial individual. Business runs through my veins, and and we want to talk to inspirational people who are doing something. Michael will share his story, and the thing that I'm the proudest of is that I've been working with Michael for about a year now, and he's going to be sharing with you a business that he's launched during COVID. So I hope it inspires you to do the same. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Michael.
Thank you for having me, Cam. How are you doing?
Yeah, great, lovely. So listen, we'll kick off with you, who is Michael Odendahl.
Okay.
That's quite an unusual name, in its own right?
It is.
We talk about family and we talk about your faith,
Yep.
Because KTV is a faith-based station, but obviously Sikhism recognises all the faiths of the world.
Yeah.
So it's always great to understand what other people's belief systems are and respect each other. And it's only by knowing and talking to each other that we can understand and respect each other.
True.
So tell me about your family. You're a married man?
I am indeed. I'm a married man. I have 7 children. So the eldest is aged 12 and they go down to just turned 3.
Fantastic.
So yes, for us, we're a very busy household.
Fantastic. So how I mean, it's difficult enough, isn't it? Having a large family in terms of the logistics of when they're at school and things.
Yes.
Because I understand you used to homeschool as well, didn't you?
We did. For many years, we wanted to homeschool. That was partly out of our faith because we wanted to give them a really strong grounding in what we believed, and I wanted to make sure that when they did go to school, if they did go to school, that they were thoroughly prepared. We wanted to also equip them with the love of learning because both my wife and I are very passionate about learning. We love to continue. Well, we believe life is a continuous journey of education, so we wanted them to embrace that, and for us that was one of the things we tried to get into them from a young age. That said, they are finding the normal challenges with school, so we always have to deal with the dislike of it, but we put them in because we were focusing on building the business, and sadly you just can't give the same attention to everything and give it equal quality of attention. So
there's only so many hours in the day.
Exactly.
So So they went to school, and then obviously
Yep.
you've had a year of homeschooling again, haven't you?
Yeah,
How's that been?
well, it felt like a bit of a conspiracy in a way. I thought no sooner do we get rid of them than the world's sending them back. So either either we did a bad job and scared the schools off, or no. In all honesty, it was we were okay especially at the beginning because we were familiar with homeschooling. It was a bit of a step up and a bit of a challenge because the difference is now you have a national curriculum and the teachers are holding the children to a standard every day, so you have to make sure it's met. But certainly as time has dragged on, the kids have felt a bit restless. They want to be back in school and be back around their friends and things like that. So it has been a challenge in the end, but I think we were better prepared than most for what it would be like having to homeschool them.
Of course. I mean, it's been a terrible time for parents and children. Yeah. From the point of view, like you said, they're not seeing their friends anymore. So, and that's a challenge that we've all shared, regardless of our background, colour, creed, etc. Right?
Exactly.
So, luckily, I don't have school-age children, so nothing for me to report on that one.
Yeah.
So, faith is a very important part of your life, Michael.
Absolutely.
So, tell us about your faith and what you actually do, because you're very active, aren't you?
Yes, I am. So I'm a Christian by faith. I became a Christian back in 2005. My wife's a Christian as well, and so we were raising our kids in the same faith. We've been actively involved in church for many years. We always try to sort of give back and serve. It's one of the things I really love about it, and I think this is one of the things that sort of unites so many people when you actually strip away the different labels, is that people all have a desire to want to serve and support each other, and I think this is really what sort of drives me in business and in life as well. That it's out of that, out of my faith, out of seeing people as intrinsically valuable, seeing people as created, as loved, and as containing these amazing gifts that just need to be harnessed and used, and so for them to be able to flourish. Those things are so important to me, and I just want to be able to take what we're building here and use it to help other people in their lives. And I think that's for me is fundamentally, if we can achieve that will be a goal accomplished. So
faith to you is giving, isn't it, and sharing?
Yeah, right? Very much so.
And so you've instilled that in your children.
Yeah.
So that it's a way of living, isn't it? It's a way of life, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things I must say that really took me by shock when I started getting into the entrepreneurial world was just how much of the teachings that are taken from faith are actually applied without necessarily even people being aware of in the business community, and it's very different to when I was in the corporate world. You see a lot more of the sort of competition and fighting. I think there's a lot more sort of fighting for one carrot in the corporate world when you know there's one job, one promotion to go for. It's a bit more dog eat dog, but I've loved being in the entrepreneurial community and seeing just the cooperation, the support for each other, the principles that people are applying, and what I find is that they all come out of a lot of them are biblical, but they are all faith-based principles, and so it's just been really encouraging for me as I've taken these steps. It feels quite natural almost to be doing this. So yeah.
Well, values come from humanity, don't they? No religion owns those. And but you touched on a really interesting point, which is that the corporate world, there's one carrot, there's one job, one promotion. Yep. And you would think it was the other way around, that entrepreneurs, because of competition, would be the guys that, willing to step on each other. But the corporate world can be much, much worse, can't it?
Definitely. I think it's a different mindset. I think as entrepreneurs, you learn about the fact that there's an abundance around. There's an abundance of opportunity. There's abundance of resources around there for everyone to be able to have a piece of the pie and flourish. So even in our business model, with where we want to go to be one of the leading sort of brands in the country, we don't need that much of the slice of the pie to be able to achieve that. So it changes the whole dynamic. Yeah. And I love that because it does build that cohesion. I feel like we all our businesses need each other to be able to survive. We can all help each other. We can all learn from each other and grow. And it's great to be a part of. Interdependence, I call it. Yeah. So we, as you know, built the largest estate agency business in Leicester. Yeah. We only had 2% of the market. Right? So that left 98% for others. But we could fulfill our dreams by just having 2%. So like you said, there's plenty to go around, isn't there? Absolutely. Absolutely. But that's a mentality thing, isn't it? It is. Abundance and scarcity. I often talk about, the money is
something that drives a lot of us.
Yes.
And scarcity mentality people tend to have less of it than those that believe in abundance, that there's not more than enough money to go around.
Yeah.
So interesting things. So how did you transition from the corporate world into the entrepreneurial world, and how did you find, you've talked about competition
yes.
being a different thing, right?
Yeah.
So what actually drove you to giving up the corporate life and becoming an entrepreneur?
Well, for us, it really came when we decided to leave London and move up to Wellingborough. We were invited by a friend who was actually setting up a church up in Wellingborough, and he invited us to be a part of it. And so after deliberating and praying over it, we felt that it was the right thing to do. But from a career point of view, that kind of shot the career in the foot, because London's where all the movers and shakers are. So we came up to Wellingborough, settled in here, started serving out in the church, and then I felt a strong call to go in, and they were running an internship at the time, and so I wanted to be a part of that, and that involved leaving my work completely. Once we had sort of come to the end of that, I was looking for other things to get back into. Obviously, family had grown quite a bit since we moved up here, and it meant that I was looking for things. I found some good jobs, but I was never quite able to provide for the family the way that I wanted to. And where it really came to a head was back in sort of 2018, about the time we're looking at starting this, where I just felt really low. We had our big family car that had not passed its MOT, so we weren't able to get it repaired or replaced, and I just felt really depressed at the fact that I couldn't provide a basic need for my family. And I'd always been restless. A lot of my friends would have said at the time that that I was looking for ways of trying to set up a business. I'd tried everything from decorating, sort of helping mates out of their houses, like a guy called Rick Smith, being able to do his property. He really gave me a chance to test it out and see if I could make it there. But yeah, sadly, I didn't have the right means to express myself, and so I started looking at various avenues, and then I found out that property was an accessible industry for me to get into, and I'd always had the bug for property. I'd wanted to be in it, but I was the guy who had the bad credit. I didn't have a mortgage or the deposit to be able to put down a mortgage, and a big family that I'd made as a rod for my own back to stop me from being able to save. So I was like, what could I do? And when I realized how accessible it was to get started, for me it was a no-brainer, and I just threw myself into it and started building from there.
And a lot of our audience will be able to relate to having a poorly paying job.
Yeah.
Because especially our forefathers, when they came across, they couldn't get the jobs there, even though they were qualified.
Yeah.
Obviously discrimination was so much more rife than it is today, and thankfully that things are changing. But I know that some of my uncles were qualified lawyers back home in India.
Yeah.
And they were railway guards and bus drivers, etc., etc., etc. So they'll recognise the fact that and obviously those jobs don't pay as well as the ones that they were qualified to do. So a lot of my own community went into business because obviously the discrimination ends there. You get paid for results, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's the thing that I think entrepreneurship really does. For me, it's probably the most honest way to live, because you get paid for the work that you put in.
Yeah. 100%.
Nobody's claiming, as they do in the corporate world. Your manager's not claiming credit for the work that you do, right?
No.
And so, and what I also find in the corporate world is sometimes that those that work the hardest are held back sometimes from promotion, aren't they? Because they're so good at their job that they won't get promoted. So, I think it's a very straightforward and forthright way of conducting yourself. So you've been self-employed, an entrepreneur since 2018?
2018, yes.
2018. So road's obviously rocky.
Yep.
And it's not always the way we want it to be. So you decided to go into property.
Yes.
And so how did you enter that? Did you take some kind of training? What did you do?
Where I got into it from was there was an event called Power to Achieve that I attended back in the summer of 2018. And that's where I first found out that property was an accessible career, because I thought that there was only one way into it, which was the traditional investor way, where you get a buy-to-let mortgage and you start building up from there. I then realized that there were so many different channels. I thought I have to get involved with this. So I booked myself onto a 3-day event with the person who subsequently became my first mentor in property. And one of the bits of advice he just gave in the run up to it was just get yourself ready for business, because at the end of the day, no one can actually work with you or trade with you if they don't know that you're open for business.
Yes.
So that forced me to, in anticipation of that, start setting up the business, built a quick website up that I was able to use as a bit of credibility booster, got the business cards done, and then just started going and doing some viewings to get some experience under my belt, because it was an industry I'd had no experience in at all. And yeah, just it started building from there. So we actually, and I posted about this today, I'm really thankful to my wife for how she stuck with me through this, because I turned around to her and said, look, I'm going to resign my job and I'm going to throw myself into this property business, and by the way, I'm signing up to a course that's going to cost X number of thousands of pounds, and we've got 7 kids, and I'm doing this on a bit of a leap of faith that this is the right thing to do. And you know, bless her, she actually you know, embraced that and said, okay, right, you've got to if you're going to do this, you've got to make it work. And yeah, you know, the rest is history, as they say. But it was a big risk to take. We packed in the job. We had a small safety net, but we knew it was either sink or swim. And yeah, just threw ourselves into it.
It's interesting. I'm sure some of our viewers that have started businesses will recognise that and know those conversations and what they've had with their partners, and better halves, etc. So, but you know what? The reality is, it is a frightening time, isn't it? That, you know, that you've just gone out and packed up this job which pays a regular wage. And all of those things, right? So, you know, it's exciting. At the same time, it can be very frightening. But, you know, what you did was you decided to educate yourself. And, you know, that's a great investment, isn't it?
Absolutely.
If you don't have experience, because there are people that mock that kind of stuff quite a lot. You know, you don't need to pay for this, don't need to pay for that. You know, if you don't pay for anything, why would anybody pay you for your services? Simple,
exactly.
isn't it? You know, it's economics at the end of the day. That's how the world goes round. So I'm thinking I'd rather pay and get the right advice than go around talking to my friends about what may or may not be.
Very much so.
So it's great. So you received some value from that. You started your own business and had some success in that.
Yes.
And so at what point did we meet? Where were you when we met?
It was quite early doors. So we set up the business in September of 2018. And we got our first property by, it was October, but the deal was signed by end of November, because we had a few things that we were negotiating back and forth with the landlord. And then you and I met, I think it was February 2019, when my first investor, Safi, booked me onto a business training course that was being hosted in London. And I think, as Providence would have it, we had communicated a little bit on Facebook.
That's right.
Because I put a couple of posts up and they created a bit of a buzz. But we didn't sort of plan on it being, but it was at the event that we were able to sort of firmly meet.
So for our viewers, tell me how you got into property and what it is, because you did something that they call rent to rent, didn't you?
Yes.
Right? Yes. It's commonly around on social media, but you know, people sitting at home will not know exactly what that is. So for those of you that are not familiar, Michael basically didn't have the money to buy his own property and get a buy-to-let mortgage, for which you need 20-25% deposit. And then, of course, once you've got the house, you know, the mortgage needs to be paid. And if you haven't got any more money to put deposits down, you can't buy any more houses. So Michael did something that's called rent to rent, where you don't actually buy the property, you lease it.
Yes.
So how does that work, Michael?
Okay, well, it basically does what it says on the tin. You're renting property from landlords, and we do it as a business. We do it as a commercial lease, which gives us the permission to be able to use the properties legally to place our own tenants into them. So we work with working professionals. And the way I started building the business was to focus on shared houses, which was one of the strategies that a lot of the people are talking about. Really good strategies for maximising your cash flow from a property, but also a lot of hard work, because you end up managing a lot of tenancies very, very quickly. So we started building from there. We were able to get to, we've now got 7 shared houses and 1 single let. And yeah, it was just building it like that, just going out and looking for properties to be able to rent from landlords. And for me, when I was actually originally very skeptical about this as a way of getting into property, because you hear a lot of things, and a lot of people would say these kind of models are scams, because people do get hurt in the same way you get tradespeople who take advantage of people all the time. But it was when I came back across it at that event, and They were talking about how it actually works, and the reason it works. That it really sort of spoke to me, because it's all about serving the landlord. What I love about this is, unlike traditional agency, which is great and it provides a good service for landlords, but we actually have a financial stake in their property, because we're invested in it, either having put some money into it ourselves to get it ready to be a shared house, or even if it's a single let, we're still invested, we're paying the landlord their rent. So we're taking on a lot of the risk for them. And I love it as a service, because it means that we can actually help people take a lot of the risk and the worry away from something. A lot of landlords, they're either accidental, or even if they are professional, they're trying to build a portfolio. They don't have necessarily the time or the energy to be able to do all the legal work to make sure that all their properties are compliant. And anyone who's got an investment is always worried about how to protect that and make sure it doesn't depreciate in value or lose money. So I just love the fact that we can actually help people look after their investments and actually build a business at the same time that provides for our needs and helps us to help more people.
There you go. I hope you guys got that. So what Michael does is takes control of a property, rents it off the landlord, and the agreement that he sets up gives him the ability to sublet that property. And what Michael was talking about was shared ownership, which also known as HMOs, houses in multiple occupation. He then lets out the rooms singly for a greater amount, obviously. He will carry out small refurbishment on those properties, so he can uplift the rent. And there's plenty of landlords that are looking for total peace of mind. So, Michael, you take that property on probably between 3 to 5 years,
yes,
typically?
Typically, yeah.
Okay, so typically he'll take that. So the landlord has peace of mind that they're going to receive rent every single month. And then Michael, obviously, for his efforts, has a profit that's substantially more than it would be if he was setting up a normal management company, which obviously is very, very popular and something that you could do. So it gives him the ability to get into the property market without having the deposits or the credit that he needed to have to be able to buy a buy-to-let property. So he was doing that until February 2019 when we met.
Yep.
So then you came on a course with me, didn't you? Let me show you the money.
Yes, you had run a few events in London and introduced a lot of property contacts and showed me actually just how much more there was still to learn in the property industry, because you can get into that sort of false sense of confidence where you think you now know it because you're doing it. And started coming along to several events, and then you were running this event, Let Me Show You the Money, and I think there was one more just before that as well, where you're talking about getting a number of properties in a certain number of days. And I was still focusing on just building that business. My goal was to be able to take on more properties and start keep on expanding that, so we could reach the figure that we had in mind of what we wanted as a monthly income, to be able to say that, that's
what was that?
We were looking for around £10,000 a month.
£10,000 a month, £120,000 a year.
Yeah.
You could do that with how many of those properties?
With some good HMOs, you probably could do it with about 10 to 15.
You could do it with 10 properties. So 10 properties under management. You could get those in a year. £100,000 or even more is achievable.
Definitely.
But that wasn't enough, was it?
It's not that it wasn't enough. It's just we did have bigger visions, and obviously whilst we were starting to build the business, we then got hit with this whole crisis, and I think that fundamentally changed our approach, because now we already knew that with our model the risk is all on us. We've got to make sure that we're paying our rents. The last thing we want to do is have a bunch of landlords who are upset with us because we've made a promise to them, and then we've fallen short just because a crisis has hit or whatever. But no one could have ever anticipated that the economy would get shut down and people would be dying all over the place and things like that. So it
but
gave
Michael,
us...
we did something, didn't we? Yeah. You see, the thing is, we were working together then, weren't we?
We were.
And I remember the phone call that we had. And one of the things, because what actually started happening was that a lot of these businesses started folding quickly, didn't they?
Yes, they did.
People started handing the keys back into landlords because they didn't want to play. But the one thing they hadn't built into their businesses, in my opinion, they didn't have a business, was no resilience whatsoever. Yeah. And the first thing we did was we wrote to all the landlords, didn't we, saying that don't worry about what's going on, and we will cover the rents. Yes. Whatever happens, there may be a delay, but we have no plans to abandon your property. Because that's what people did, didn't they? Yeah, absolutely. And communication is the key with your clients, isn't it? It absolutely is. And Michael, how much did that help your landlords, or help your business to survive?
Immeasurably. I mean, we have really good relationships with our landlords, and I've really enjoyed building those. And it's nice to actually know that we can differentiate ourselves from a lot of the market, because sadly there have been people who have been hurt during this time. There have been people who have not had the resilience in the business, and that for us was actually one of the learnings about that's come from this crisis, is that the business needs to be resilient. And for us it was about remaining lean. So the first few months we had to batten the hatches. We had to make sure that we were honouring all of our commitments, and we work with investors as well. So we had really supportive investors who saw the bigger picture as well, and saw that actually it's better to come out of this with a business than to try and extract every penny that you can out of it and then end up with nothing. And that helped us navigate the crisis and taught us a very valuable lesson about how to actually build a resilient business that can weather the storm. The great thing with the property industry is that it's an evergreen industry.
Of course.
There's always going to be people needing houses. So we knew we were in a good industry, and that's one of the things that drew me to getting into property in the first place. But with these kind of crises, then obviously it opens up new unexpected challenges that you wouldn't anticipate having to deal with. So tenants struggling with rent payments because they lose their jobs, and we've had a number of those over our portfolio that we've had to support and help, but we've never missed a rent payment, and we've been able to maintain that. And it all came down to the teachings we had about how to assess the right deals, so we didn't overpromise ourselves. And then how to just build the business around it that could support us, and it came down to a bit of scale that helped us to navigate those times.
Absolutely. So did you find, were you surprised that both tenants, investors and landlords, once we decided that, Michael, let's keep them in the loop, and number one is, any fears that they've got, please, let's explain to them we're still here, and we will honour our commitments. Were you surprised at how helpful they all were?
I think, especially on the with the landlords and the investors that we had worked with. I mean, I like to work with people who are like-minded, and it helps to just create strong relationships that are lasting. And that, for me, was always what I wanted. I didn't want to just work with people who were going to rub off the wrong way.
Of course.
And so it was pleasantly surprising, but at the same time, because we had those relationships, and we'd taken that approach of communicating with them and things like that. It seemed it actually followed quite naturally, which was, as I say, was amazing. It meant we could actually navigate the most challenging of those times, and still honour our arrangements and keep on building those relationships. And we've actually had landlords come to us and talk to us about offering us more properties as a result of that as well. So it just goes to show that, as you say, like a little bit of communication, or just being a bit proactive in it, and standing by your word and what you're going to say you're going to deliver, has a huge impact on being able to build a strong business.
Fantastic. So we're coming out of lockdown, hopefully.
Yes, I hope so.
My hometown of Leicester included, right? So infuriating. It's my hometown, but I did live just outside of Leicester. So I'm not I wasn't part of the lockdown. Of course, there's not a lot that I can do.
Yeah, I remember you saying.
Everything's part of Leicester, right? So I kind of drive around the outside to my office. Yeah. But everything inside was. But hopefully, like I said, let's hope that the leadership there takes note.
Definitely.
So we're coming out of lockdown, and so what are your thoughts? Obviously we'll talk about the new business that we're launching. But what are your hopes and dreams now that we're coming out? Where do you see the economy? Where do you see the country? And where do you see people? And where do you see your own family in terms of, there's 9 of you, that's a large household.
It is.
Right? So, and it has all its challenges and all the glory of having, all the kids around. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
And the Indian community is all about community and family.
Exactly.
Right. So where do you see things in the next year or so?
Well, I'm cautiously optimistic that we'll be able to come out of the lockdown. I do think that as we come into winter again, we know that diseases can be seasonal. So I expect that there'll probably be some things that we'll be looking forward to in winter. But obviously they've been rolling out this vaccination campaign, which has been successful. And I think I'm hoping that we'll be able to come out of this. The challenge is obviously we have economic situations now have been caused by the results of this as well. So
yes.
This is where it's unenviable being in the government's position, because you've got to manage people's health and safety and livelihoods alongside the economy and everything else alongside, on top of that. So I think that we're only just going to begin to see the economic consequences of this. We know there's going to be quite a bit of a fallout from it.
Yeah.
They've been pumping a lot of money into the economy. The speed at which the money has been circulating has slowed down a lot because people haven't been able to go out to as many places and buy. So I think there will be more businesses that start to fail, and hopefully there are ways of being able to prevent that. And I think that the sooner we can get back to some semblance of normality will be the best thing ever for those businesses. But obviously, there is going to be difficult ahead. I think we've got a long way to go before we'll see the end of this crisis.
So we're going to have, I think, like you said, the fallout will only begin once we start opening up the economy, and we'll see what we're left with. Government spent an awful lot of money. They have. And at some point, somebody's got to pay. Yeah. And so one of the major banks announced today 111 branch closures. Wow. So, it's coming. Yeah, news is filtering through. But look, you know what? During the recession, companies like WhatsApp, Pinterest, Uber was started during the last recession. And you've had your own, instead of just battening down the hatches and protecting yourself, you sought out to start a new business, didn't you?
Yes, absolutely. And I feel like it's worth saying that there's some advice that a really good public speaker once said, a guy called Jim Rohn, and he was saying, if you want to sum up all of world history in just one sentence, it's always opportunity mixed with difficulty. And sometimes the scales sort of tip from either side, but there's always a mix. Yes. And we're in a time at the moment where there's a bit more difficulty than opportunity, but we know that after this time comes, then the opportunity will start to increase again as well. But even in the midst of a crisis, there was an opportunity to be able to grow. It was a question we had to actually ask ourselves: how do we do this? Because we've got to be more selective over the deals. We can't just take on anything that comes, because although there would potentially be more properties available, there's also a lot more risk now, because we can't say for any degree of certainty that even if someone's got a really good job and is well paying and they check all the boxes on paper, that they'd be able to maintain their rents. So it forced us to have a strong look at our business and see how could we actually grow it in a way that would allow us to continue to help and support and do what we're doing as a business, but also where we could actually get the deals that we needed in order to be able to continue running our core operation. And that's where this new initiative came from.
Yes, okay. So we're launching.
Yes, we are.
Completely new business.
Yes.
Based on the model of rent to rent.
Yes.
And being able to manage properties.
Yes.
Because one of the things that you and I both agree on is that a lot of money is paid for doing courses.
It is.
And there's a lot of good courses out there, and a lot of people like yourself have benefited. But at the same time, sometimes what happens is that after you paid for the course, there's actually no money left to start a business. Yeah. Right? So that's it. You and I have come out with what we think is an ingenious solution. Right? So, I'm not going to steal your thunder. So tell us about the new business and what it is and what we're hoping to achieve, because a lot of our viewers and people that will see this program, on the reruns and on social media, will face some challenging times in terms of job losses. Yeah. And no promotions, etc. Yes. Yeah. And all sorts of other things that we really don't know how things are going to unravel as we come out of this. Yeah. So tell me what you've done, and I'm really excited to hear about this.
I'm excited to be sharing it. It feels like such a long time in the making. Well, as I say, we know that there's going to be some challenges coming, and we know that that's probably going to mean that people end up facing the job losses and situations like that. So we thought, is there a way that we could actually sort of position ourselves to sort of help people? Because I've shared this publicly on social media. I honestly believe that if we hadn't started the business when we did, it probably would have wiped us out this whole crisis, because we just weren't in a strong enough position as a family.
Definitely.
So it's caused me to be very reflective over the course of this, to think, just where could we have been had we not taken action? And we looked at different opportunities, and one of the things that I thought of was, well, we've got, as you say, a really thriving education industry. There are a lot of people teaching people how to start businesses, which is brilliant because they're sharing information that sadly the school system doesn't share with people, and showing people how accessible it is. But also having a business, this whole thing has showed me that it is the best way forward, because it's the only way you can really sort of mitigate as much of the risk as possible. You're a lot more in control of your own situation. We can't control the environment around us, but at least when you have a business, you can look ahead and you can make decisions that help you prepare for what's coming. And whereas if you're in a job situation, you tend to be the last one to find out what's happening. So we thought, well, why don't we see if we can take our business model that we know worked. We know it can produce a good profit for people if they run it well. We knew that there were weaknesses in the model as well, because sadly, some of the things that aren't being taught are the lessons that we've learned through the COVID. So things about the benefit of scale, the benefits of assessing the right deal and making sure you stick with it rather than just taking what comes. And we thought, well, actually, if we could harness this and then turn this into a business that we could offer as a business in a box for people who are looking to secure their futures and looking to achieve financial freedom or whatever their goals were, this is a really accessible business model that would allow them to be able to build a profitable business in property. And so we started sitting to work on how we could do that. We're now at the point where we're ready to launch our official franchise business.
Okay, so it's a franchise that helps people to get into the property business.
Absolutely.
Specifically rent to rent, which is the business that you do.
Yep.
So you've put together all the components that are needed.
Yes.
So rather than going to a course, you will purchase the franchise.
Correct.
Which I understand you're going for accreditation, not quite there yet.
Yes.
So it will be an accredited franchise.
It will be, yes.
Very, very shortly.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a case of, and is there any training involved as well? Because obviously, where we came from is, like you said, the education industry is where it's come from.
Yes.
But the frustrations of the fact that sometimes the education industry takes so long that you don't actually end up with a business at the end of it.
Exactly.
So this is putting the business at the point where all the tools are already done for people.
Yes.
There's business in a box.
Yep, it is.
And then, so the thing for me is always that you can buy that.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you then ensure that the people that buy that will be successful as successful as they possibly can be? What kind of training have you put in place?
Absolutely, it's a really good question, and I think the two are hand in hand. They work hand in hand. We want people. The motto that I came up with as I was developing this was "learn while they earn" or "earn while they learn." It's interchangeable, and we want them to be able to achieve that. So there is training involved. Obviously, like if you're getting involved with any other franchise business, you need to know how the business runs, how to operate it, and how to be able to use the systems that are provided to you. So we're going to take people through all of that. Mm-hmm. We're going to share the model that we've been running and show them how to be able to assess deals so that they can take on the right ones and not get lumbered with something that's going to cause them problems down the line. And then we're going to give them all the other supplementary documents and training that we've developed over the course of this time. The lessons that we've learned about being lean, about having the benefits of scale to help your business survive, all of those are going to be taught to people, and we're going to do that as training when they take out their franchise. There's going to be an initial training session that's going to be run over the course of 2 days. We're looking at bringing in some of the experts within the industry, things like that, to be able to really give people a chance to have the best chance they can of making a success with this. But we've also recognised that actually there are people who have very little experience in property, like myself. They'll be potentially looking at this with no experience in the industry at all. And so we want to be able to sort of help people in that situation as well. So we have got an additional 12-month mastermind that we're going to be running, that we've spoken about, is going to be led between us, so you'll be involved as well, where we're going to give people the extra learnings that they need to be able to to build the lifestyle that they want. So there's going to be a lot more teaching there about the lifestyle principles behind business and how to the mindsets to have, the wealth mindset, abundance mindset. But also we want a lot of accountability, because I think one of the main reasons why people fail is when they're on their own. It's very easy to fall into old habits or not have someone who's pushing you to help you achieve that goal. And we all need that extra nudge from time to time. So I think this will be a really good way of being able to help people, give them the extra accountability. And I think for me, what I'm so excited about with this is the fact that they don't have to do this all first and then go and set up a business on top of that. They get this from day one. So literally, the moment they've been trained, the moment they know what to do, all they've got to go out and do is find a deal and plug it into the system, and then they can start earning straight away.
So the thing is that they can come, set themselves up with the franchise, come for the 2 days training, and they can literally go, whether it's part-time or full-time, because I'm a very big believer in the fact that don't burn all your bridges in terms of don't go and quit unless you've got a bit of savings behind you. So this can be a part-time, a side hustle.
It can be.
And so we can obviously advise that, can't we?
Absolutely.
So they come, so literally within a week of entering that, they're actually in business, rather than doing a course for a year.
Exactly, and it may sound like it's one of those things which you think, how can this actually work? But what we've decided to do is really focus in on one specific strategy, and I think that's what's going to make the difference here. Is that there are a million different ways of making money in property, but there's no point knowing them if you've got no way of being able to get started, and it can also lead to a lot of confusion and people sort of pushing in all sorts of different directions, because they all have their strengths and weaknesses as strategies, and people can just get lost in the mire, and so before you know it, you're a year down the line, you spent say £20,000 on a mentorship program, you've then sort of set up a bit of a business, incurred some costs there, maybe you've taken on a deal, but it's not really working, and there's still costs down the line to go through. So I just thought, well, why go through that when you can actually focus on one strategy, ignore the others initially, and to find your way in, get the experience, learn how the business works, build up the credibility, leverage credibility as well, because that's one of the things that takes a long time to establish in the industry. And that was one of the things I think, when we first met, that was actually a point of conversation, because it's so easy, and people are being told all the time, like, position yourself as an expert, but most of the people who do that, a lot of people who do, don't really have the expertise to be that expert that they're claiming to be. So there were a lot of things that you showed us in the process that's helped us unlock our business. And so we want to narrow that down, be really focused on what we're teaching people, and then help them get to where they want to go. And the great thing is, not everyone who takes on a franchise has to take on 100 properties or 200 properties to manage. This can be built to whatever level someone is happy to operate on, that gives them the lifestyle that they're looking for. Because again, we had this conversation a few days ago where we were both agreed that actually we get into these businesses not because we just want to challenge or because we want to deal with the problems that they occur, but they're a means to an end, and we've all got dreams and aspirations and goals that's come with the lifestyle we want to lead, and we want to help people get there.
Fantastic. So the thing is, as you said, nobody wants a business for the sake of it. They want a lifestyle, they want to earn for their families and have a better standard of living than employment provides. Because you're taking a greater level of risk.
Absolutely.
The thing that I remember is when we first started working together, is we started looking at deals. And then deal after deal wouldn't stack up.
Absolutely.
And you were saying to me, Kam, if I was on my own, I would have taken some of that. Right? And something that we may be able to talk about in the future is that there was something that we turned down that subsequently has come to bite somebody else, hasn't it? And we've learned that, unfortunately. So business can be a very expensive lesson.
It is.
But you've put in all the support networks. So literally it's a business in a box. Somebody can come and take it away. Within a week, they're running their business, and which is an incredible thing. But then you've also provided the support that is needed to go with that business. If the person wants it over a 12-month period.
Absolutely, and there are other things, other elements of support that we can bring in addition to that. So we've got a very experienced person in lettings who helps us do our admin and compliance work, which has really helped our business as well. Because when you're doing everything on your own, and this is what was great about the rent-to-rent strategy, is that you can be a one-man band, and you can do it. You don't have to take on a shop front on the high street and take on a massive staff. And we want to show people how easy that is to do. But it's also easy when you're that one man to miss those important things that you need to make sure you're ticking, or boxes that you're ticking in the background. So we've got that support behind the scenes already available for people to use. Yeah,
so they truly appear to be a business.
Absolutely.
So rather than answering the phones yourself or doing the administration yourself, things that you can't do, especially when you start, right?
Yeah.
So Michael, we talked about mastermind groups and academies and things, and I've seen many thousands of people come to these, but very few of them actually start their business. Is that right? The numbers will be in single figures. That at the end of those academies, people that actually start a business and they become successful. Yeah. But franchise type businesses are much more likely to succeed because of the support network, right?
Absolutely, and I think that's where the difference is. It's about, do you have the support underneath you? Even the mentorship programs, they do deliver great or better results because they provide that bit of extra support. But the bit that's really missing is the business to plug it into. So that's what I think is going to be really valuable here. Is that you don't have to go and start building all the systems, and for all the people who are going through a lot of these courses, that's what they have to do. They come out, they do get some good tips, they get shown the right strategies to follow, but then they've got to go and start all the way from the beginning, set up their business, make a name for themselves, do all the networking, and that just takes time. And so that's, I think, the reason why so many fail, because they put a good effort in, and they're working hard to try and get the results. But again, as we found, it's really difficult to persuade someone to go with you and trust you with their property or with something that's important to them. If you are just one man or one woman and you only have a small operation going, because it is a much higher risk, even if you're saying, actually, we're not going to be a risky proposition to you because we're taking the risk. Right. So that's where I think this works really well, because people can actually leverage the size and scale of what we've put together and help them grow their businesses much faster.
So Michael, time waits for no man. So tell me, what is the business called, and how do people contact you if they're interested?
Okay, so the business is called Odendals.
Okay.
And people can get in touch with us via our website. So we've just had a massive overhaul of the website, put a lot of money into that to get it to where it needs to be. So again, it's a really credible resource in the background. There's a section there about the franchise. People can register their interest straight away. We have a prospectus we can send out to people. And then what we'd like to do, like I said, it's really important for us to work with people who carry the same ethos as us and want to build a business, but they want to build it properly and run it in a way that's going to build long-lasting relationships. So when people inquire, we'll arrange a chat with them to be able to find out what their goals are. We want to support them and serve them in the best way we can as well. Brilliant. And then once they've got that, then we can talk about how to get started.
Brilliant. Michael, thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Wish you all the best. Come back and tell us at some point how it's going.
I will.
So, wonderful opportunity. You can contact myself if you haven't got Michael's details. It's the company's called Odendals, and you can contact him on social media, through the website, etc., etc., etc. So if you're interested, I hope that was for those of you that are looking to start business or are entrepreneurs already. I hope that was a nice insight into the life of an entrepreneur, how a business gets going. So I want to thank Michael for coming in today and sharing this exciting opportunity with us. So, end of another show. So for those of you that were asking for a show in Punjabi, we'll have some news for you in the next week or so. And next week, my guest will be Paul Tinker, very dear friend of mine, who will be talking about the refurbishment costs of property. I know a lot of our community, a lot of people are in the property business, but costing out and getting refurbishment works done is an absolute nightmare if you get it wrong. So Paul's an expert in that field. He'll also be sharing his journey about his career, his personal life, his family life, because we'd like to know what makes people tick. and underneath it, we're all human beings. So until next week, thank you so much for tuning in today. Hope you enjoyed the show. Getting some really good feedback, so thank you very much for those of you that are contacting me and those of you that are contacting the station, that you're really liking the show. And we've been a bit of a trailblazer, you know, the Indian channels didn't do shows like this. Now they're all looking at us and looking to mimic what we're doing, so which is absolutely fantastic. So until next week, thank you very much and goodbye.